Hey everybody, my name is Jay, and we're talking about Astaroth today. If you haven't watched my video titled I Got Every Character in Soul Calibur 6 to S rank and this is how I did it yet, please do so, as I'll be going through this character in the same format that I discuss topics in that video, and I'd rather not make the same disclaimers in each video I make. So I'll admit, I was honestly pretty bad with Astaroth. He was one of the hardest characters to get to S rank for me, and that's due to how read-based his playstyle is and how lacking in fundamentals he is. It was really tough for me. You know what isn't tough to do literally at all with Astaroth, though? Having fun! This guy is an absolute blast to play, even when you're losing, honestly. I think you'll really be enjoying yourself. You really need to pay attention to what the opponent is doing, but man, it is rewarding to play this guy. When it comes to block punishes, -10 you've got nothing, -12 4A, which you can potentially go into a string. You don't have to though. 14 you've got 3K, 16 you've got 6B, and it basically stays the same from there at the beginning. So what should come as a surprise to literally no one who's been around the game for a while, block punishment and Astaroth go together like Siegfried and critical thinking. To say block punishment is not Asta's forte would be a grave understatement, as he's the worst on the roster at it. I do believe it's important to find the places where your opponent goes off the deep end and puts themselves at like -16, so you can get a 6B, as this is the first time you accrue meaningful damage on a block punish, and it's quite typical for Astaroth players to intentionally drop -12 and -14 punishes for a command grab attempt. This part is pretty tricky about playing Asta and requires a lot of experience to pull off right, but it's important to note that it is never definitely the correct response to either always block punish in these spots, or never block punish with Asta. Everything with Asta from stem to stern is highly contextual on the player, the stage positioning, and the life totals. If my opponent puts them at -14, puts themselves at -14, and 3K isn't going to kill, but a command grab is, then it sounds like it'd be better for me to just take a bet on a grab in this spot. If I've noticed in the past that my opponent ducks just on reaction to being that minus on Asta, I might have to think differently. Does my opponent always respect or always disrespect my frame advantage on my -12 and -14 punishes? Or after slight frame advantages, like, post 3K on hit? If so, I may go for them more often, as my opponent is allowing me to just simply snowball my pressure when they technically don't have to, just by being predictable. Everything with Asta comes down to reads on the opponent. He focuses on this more than anyone else on the roster, and he gets more rewarded than anyone else on the roster, so it's always best to be paying attention to what the opponent is doing, and don't let it get you down if you're wrong multiple times around, since Astaroth's comeback factor is through the roof. You really only need a few reads to completely change the game. Now, when it comes to Asta's While Rising kit, it's pretty limited too. Basically, for the majority of all situations, you want to be looking at full crouch 3K. This move has a lot of perks like a knockdown and a wide hitbox, and the fact that it's unsafe rarely comes up since it looks exactly like 6K, which is safe. There really are very few reasons to use things like While Rising A, While Rising B, While Rising K. It's either too slow or too little damage. It's important to note that it's possible to throw out a command grab from crouch, at the very least, but you don't want to get into the habit of ducking grabs and then punishing with a grab attempt, as grabs are the one thing that someone can defend themselves against on whiff. If you want to be a beast, you can start getting used to using full crouch B plus K into a crouch grab attempt, but boy, this is really slow. That kind of thing might need to wait, and you can focus entirely on full crouch 3K as the most non-committal option in this context. So, when it comes to Oki, Astaroth's Oki is pretty feast or famine in kind of the best way possible. You can either cash out your combo to get the largest amount of damage possible, or you can hit for slightly less damage and get some pretty fantastic Oki. The developers of this game were sadistic enough to give Asta plenty of opportunities to end his combos with the opponent in a non-techable knockdown right in front of him. The most obvious and scariest response is just doing a command grab, which in many situations can't even be soul charged out of. The next option would be to duck, in which case Asta has 4B or crouch grab, if you're into that sort of thing. A common response from the opponent in this spot is to roll away, and his options for this aren't entirely great. He's got 4B, but then the pressure's kind of over. You just hit him and then he gets out. You can go with like an A plus G2. Overall, as you might expect, Asta's Oki is entirely based off of the command grab threat, and his options to punish people who are scared of it aren't entirely that scary in and of themselves. It's best to, again, pay attention to how the opponent reacts to these spots, whether they respect the command grab or not, and punish when you can. You can take one of two philosophies here, similar to block punishment. Take the small punish that's less committal, or just go for the gusto on a grab for a big reward, but a lower chance of success. So hey, we came to the grab sections of this video, and it's Astaroth, so really what can you say? This is kind of the point of playing the character. He's got grabs for everything. Best to assume everyone by default is breaking your back command grab, as it leads to the most damage, especially against the wall or the ring edge. Try to become more knowledgeable on just how far the grab range is for Astaroth, so that you can be scary as soon as possible with them. Any time you spend as a new player running up to the opponent and not making use of the long grab range is time you spend hesitating on your grab attempt, and it makes it easier to see. I was a big fan when I was playing this character of the 4-6 and 6-4 tech crouch grabs, as they're the longest range grab in the entire game, and, you know, hey, it's a tech crouch, and that's really something I'm a fan of. The armor grabs can be great against some characters, and terrible against ones that have just, like, common fast strings. So it's kind of you can be kind of hot or cold on these. Crouch grabs can be used more often when you play against the same person a lot and get used to their timings for crouching, or against specific characters that happen to be crouching a lot, like your Amy's and Sophie's. The forward grab sets up strong Oki, as I mentioned before, and the back grab can be comboed into 2-2B for max damage, or you do 1-1 BK for better Oki. When it comes to Asta's overall game plan, slow and steady is the name of the game. He's simply too slow and lacking in fundamental strength to be played otherwise. His long-range game plan can be incredibly annoying, and is relatively easy to understand. 6A is a really important move, goes into a crouch grab attempt, or you've got a 3K, just guaranteed. BA, timed awkwardly, like this really slow piece of a string, or the inverse of it, AB, it does a similar thing. These buttons can just wreak havoc on a small range character, and they do decent damage on their own, pretty significantly so. You poke and prod with these buttons constantly to either set up once the opponent has had enough of you and wants to try and get in and play the game. Then you're going to be backdashing into 1-1 BK, which combos into back turn B plus K into A plus B. Or you try to get someone to be reckless with their approach and you land a 6B counter hit. 2-2K, 2-2B. That's your max damage. You can switch it out for 1-1 BK, similar to the back command grab, for less damage but better Oki. In the mid-range, that's when you get your command grab going. Close range command grabs are frankly much less intimidating, because the closer you are, the more the grabs are on the opponent's mind. This is why it's so important to get used to that max range that I was talking about before, so that the opponent has to worry about them at every turn. Even new players will be wary of your highest damage options when you have the ability to buffer it by blocking a move at close range. That's why, you know, the closer you are, the grabs get less and less scary. Mid-range also opens up 6K, aka Bull Rush. This is just the best mid the character has, and it can be used as a filler for most situations. Safe on block, large hitbox, solid reward, on counter hit, you've got your knockdown. Your mid-range can be summed up with frankly just those two options, command grabs and Bull Rush. And you can also sprinkle a little bit of 2-1-4A in here, if you want to. This move is great for meter gain and spacing out, not to mention the large amount of damage if you happen to be right. Now for close range, let's be honest, this is not where he excels. Asta isn't amazing at dealing with mashy pressure and doesn't have the greatest way to use movement to escape. Your options here still include command grab. You've also got 6K, which on counter hit will give you a 2B plus K into a grab. This move can be unsafe, 6K that is, but the hitbox is really large, and it's basically the tech crouch that's available to you. You have to get used to the idea that Asta will need to take a bet in spots like this. You don't have much of a choice. 4A can be used if you're super up close, and Bull Rush, similar to mid-range, continues to be a decent choice. You'll notice a lot of the options I'm talking about lose to Step Duck, which is an unfortunate issue. 6A plus B can help, which goes into a crouch grab attempt on counter hit. It is unsafe, but you know, what are you going to do? Otherwise, you can go for the full crouch 3K for the wider hitbox, or betting on a crouch grab to deal with people who are step ducking at slight frame disadvantage. Overall, as you can tell, Asta is frankly the weakest character in the game, quote-unquote, on paper. He has a ton of situations where his options are limited, and gets less damage than others on block and whip punishes. His mix-ups are grabs or mids, and that doesn't really help. However, he can make any matchup and any player look like absolute trash if you have the right reads. Significantly more so than anyone else on the roster. This is a character that melts people away in 3 reads. It's not even an exaggeration, and you'll definitely get your opportunities if you're patient enough, continue to build your meter, where he is one of the best on the roster, both at using meter and gaining it. And this is a character that just overall plays with fire. It goes all in on their ability to understand the opponent's coin flips and timing. So trust me, it's gonna be a blast if you try to play. And yeah, do the regular YouTube things. Thanks to everybody who's been watching the series so far, and we'll be back with the next character shortly. Thanks very much.